The myth begins. Emerges empire. For centuries, the galaxy had whispered of a legend, a tale passed down from one generation to the next. It was a story of a warship so powerful that it could change the fate of entire empires. The warship was known as the Emerged Empire, a name that struck fear into the hearts of those who heard it. Some believed it was just a myth, a story told by the old and wise to explain the unexplainable. Others feared that it was real, waiting to awaken from the shadows of history. The Emerged Empire was not just any ship. It was said to be enormous, larger than any vessel ever built, with weapons capable of annihilating fleets in mere minutes. Legends spoke of its ancient creators, an unknown race of beings whose technology was far ahead of anything the galaxy had ever known. These beings vanished long ago, but their ship, the Emerged Empire, was said to remain dormant, waiting for the right moment to return. The stories began long before the explorers had even been born. From the farthest reaches of space, there were tales of its last battle. A battle so fierce that it destroyed the entire fleet it faced, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. Many believe the ship had vanished with its creators, lost to time and memory. But some, a few brave or foolish souls, kept the hope alive that the warship was not gone, merely waiting to emerge once again. As the years passed, the myth faded into the background of everyday life. People talked about it in whispers, often laughing at the thought of such a ship existing. The Emerged Empire was nothing more than a bedtime story, a legend to scare children or to explain the unexplained phenomena in space. But deep in the heart of the galaxy, there were those who could never forget. The idea that such a powerful warship might exist, hidden in the dark reaches of space, was too powerful to dismiss. And some wondered, what if the ship wasn't just a story? What if it was real, waiting for the day when it would rise again? In a quiet corner of the galaxy, a team of explorers stumbled upon something that would change everything. They were an unlikely group, scientists, engineers, and historians who had dedicated their lives to uncovering lost civilizations and forgotten technologies. For years, they had studied the old maps, the ancient star charts, and the myths that had been passed down through the ages. The Emerged Empire had always been a curiosity to them, an enigma that they couldn't quite understand. But there was one thing they had never expected to find: evidence. One day, during an ordinary mission to explore a distant, uncharted region of space, the explorers discovered something that made their hearts race. It was an old map, so old that its edges had become brittle, its surface faded by time. But there, in the center, were strange symbols, the same symbols that were said to be associated with the Emerged Empire. The map had been hidden for centuries, tucked away in a forgotten vault, waiting to be uncovered. The explorers didn't know what they had found at first. The symbols on the map were unlike any language they had ever seen, but there was something about them that felt familiar, as if they had been waiting for someone to decipher them. The team's historian, a woman named Lyra, was the first to recognize the connection. She gasped as she held the map up to the light. "This is it," she said softly. "The Emerged Empire. It's real." The rest of the team gathered around her, their faces a mixture of disbelief and excitement. For years, they had been chasing ghosts, following clues that led to dead ends. But now, they had found something tangible, something that could prove the warship was more than just a myth. The map pointed to a location deep within the uncharted sector of space, a place so remote that few had dared to venture there. "This could be it," said Commander Jarek, the leader of the exploration team. "The Emerged Empire might still be out there, waiting for us to find it." The thought of discovering the legendary warship filled them with excitement, but also a deep sense of unease. If the Emerged Empire truly existed, what would they find? Was it really just a forgotten relic, or was it something more, something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy? Lyra carefully rolled up the map and handed it to Commander Jarek. "We need to go there," she said, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. We have to see it for ourselves. And so, with the legend of the emerged empire now a very real possibility, the team of explorers set their course toward the unknown. The journey would take them to the farthest reaches of space, into a region that no one had ever dared to explore. But for them, the mystery of the emerged empire was too great to ignore. Little did they know, they were about to uncover something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. As they set off toward the unknown, the stars twinkling in the distance, the legends of the past began to feel a little too real. The myth was no longer just a story. The emerged empire was waiting, and soon they would all find out what it truly meant for the galaxy. The discovery. The journey through uncharted space was nothing like what the explorers had expected. The deeper they ventured into the unknown, the more the ship's systems began to pick up strange readings. At first, it was just blips on their scanners, small anomalies that could easily be dismissed. But the further they went, the more frequent and intense the signals became. Something was out there, something massive. The explorers' curiosity grew as they continued, but so did their sense of unease. Lyra spent hours poring over the map again, trying to make sense of the cryptic symbols. She had an idea of where the map was pointing, but it was not easy to decipher. The map led them toward a sector of space that had been avoided for centuries, mostly due to its reputation as being hostile and impossible to navigate. It was an area that most star maps left out, with only faint, blurry lines marking the unknown. It was as if no one had dared to chart it. "This is it," Lyra muttered, her voice a mix of disbelief and excitement. "The map matches the star systems in this sector. We're getting closer." Commander Jarek, ever the cautious leader, stared at the blinking data on his terminal. "But why hasn't anyone else tried to explore this area? There's a reason it's not on the maps." Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with determination. "I don't know why no one else has, but I'm sure of one thing. We have to find out." As the explorers moved deeper into the sector, strange phenomena began to occur. The ship's sensors started to malfunction, and the crew felt a constant unease, as if the very fabric of space was pulling them in. The temperature fluctuated wildly, and a sense of being watched hung in the air. They were entering an area where no one had gone before, and the very forces of nature seemed to react to their presence. One evening, as the crew gathered in the observation deck, staring out at the dark void of space, the first real clue appeared. A faint glimmer, like the reflection of light off a distant surface, was visible on the edge of their scanners. It was too small to be a planet, too faint to be a star, but it was there. It seemed to flicker, like a pulse, sending waves of energy toward their ship. "What is that?" Commander Jarek asked, his voice tense. The crew had been watching for any sign of the warship, but this was different. The signal seemed to be coming from a point far away, yet it was drawing them in. The ship's navigational systems struggled to maintain course as they followed the faint trail, the signal growing stronger with every passing moment. Finally, after hours of uncertainty, the light grew brighter, until a shadow emerged from the dark. The ship's crew gasped in disbelief. It was there, the emerged empire. At first, they couldn't believe their eyes. The legendary warship, which had once been thought to exist only in myths and stories, lay before them. The ship was enormous, far beyond anything they had ever seen, and it seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow. Its massive hull was covered in strange ancient markings, much like those on the map they had found. The warship looked as though it had been untouched by time, its weapons powered, and its engines humming with life. The emerged empire was real, and it was waiting. The explorers stared in awe, their breaths caught in their throats. For a moment, time seemed to stop as they took in the sight of the legendary ship. But then the realization hit them hard. This wasn't just a discovery. It was an invitation. The map had led them here, to this very moment. And now they were standing face to face with the myth they had been chasing for so long. But what did it mean? Why had the ship appeared now, after so many centuries? And who, or what, was aboard. "We've found it," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. But the real question is, what happens next? The crew stood frozen, the weight of the discovery pressing down on them. There was no going back now. They had come too far. The emerged empire was no longer just a story, it was a reality. But one thing was certain, whatever happened next would change the galaxy forever. As they prepared to make contact, the silence of space felt even more profound. Every decision they made from this point on would lead them deeper into the mystery of the emerged empire. And with each passing moment, the crew knew they were standing on the edge of something monumental. The myth was no longer a myth. The warship had emerged, and its secrets were waiting to be uncovered. The approach. The discovery of the emerged empire was beyond anything the crew had imagined. It was not just a ship, it was an entire relic of an ancient civilization, brimming with power and secrets. Now that they had found it, the real challenge began. How would they approach the warship? What should they do next? The explorers sat in tense silence, their minds racing as they tried to make sense of what lay before them. Commander Jarek was the first to break the silence. "We can't just rush in blindly. We need to understand what we're dealing with. This ship could hold more than we can handle." Lyra agreed, her face pale as she examined the data streaming in from the sensors. "The readings are unlike anything we've seen. It's as if the emerged empire is alive. Its energy signature is pulsing, but it's not following any normal patterns." The ship's computer system continued to receive strange, shifting signals. Every few moments, the data would fluctuate, as if something was monitoring their every move. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, sending a chill down the crew's spines. Even the most experienced explorers couldn't shake the feeling that they were trespassing on something ancient and powerful. "We're too close," one of the crew members said, his voice shaky. "Shouldn't we pull back and report this?" But Lyra shook her head. "No, we've come this far. We need to see this through." As they continued to approach, the ship's massive structure grew clearer. The emerged empire was like nothing they had ever seen. Its sleek, angular design seemed almost organic, as though it had been grown rather than built. The hull was adorned with strange, alien symbols that glowed faintly in the dark expanse of space. The markings were mesmerizing, shifting subtly as if they held a secret, an unspoken language from a time long past. As the explorer's ship drew closer, a low hum vibrated through the hull, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to emanate from the emerged empire itself. It was a warning, or perhaps an invitation. Commander Jarek's voice crackled over the comms, steady but filled with uncertainty. "This is it. We're within range to dock. We need to make contact, but proceed with caution. We have no idea what we're walking into." The crew prepared themselves for the next step, securing their spacesuits and making final checks on the ship's systems. The emerged empire loomed before them, an enigmatic giant that filled their viewports. Despite their resolve, each of them couldn't help but feel a rising sense of fear. This was no ordinary discovery. It was the unknown. And that in itself was terrifying. As they initiated docking procedures, the warship's surface seemed to shift. Panels on the hull moved as if responding to their presence, revealing a docking bay. It was as though the emerged empire had been waiting for them, anticipating their arrival. The ship's energy field flickered, and a beam of light shot from the warship, connecting with their ship's exterior. It was a signal, a request, or perhaps a command. "We're being pulled in," Lyra whispered, her fingers flying across the control panel. "This is it. We're about to board the emerged empire." Commander Jarek nodded, his face grim. "Stay alert. We don't know what's inside." The ship slowly glided toward the docking bay. The light from the warship illuminated the surroundings, casting eerie shadows across the explorers' faces. They could feel the gravity of the moment. This wasn't just a historical find. This was a moment in time that would echo throughout the galaxy for generations. As their ship settled into the docking bay, the entire crew fell silent. Their hearts pounded in their chests, each member lost in their own thoughts. They were standing on the threshold of something that could either change everything or destroy them. The doors to the docking bay opened with a soft hiss, revealing a dark corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly into the heart of the warship. The air inside was thick, carrying the scent of ancient metal and forgotten dust. A dim light flickered from far ahead, casting long shadows on the walls, which were lined with the same glowing symbols they had seen on the ship's exterior. "This is it," Commander Jarek said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Stay close and be ready for anything." The crew stepped forward, their boots echoing in the vast, silent hall. The sense of being watched was overwhelming now, but they pressed on, driven by the promise of what lay ahead. As they moved deeper into the emerged empire, the walls began to hum with a low frequency, a vibration that seemed to resonate deep within their bones. The ship was alive, and it was watching them. With every step, the crew grew more and more aware that they were not alone. The warship, once a myth, was now a looming presence, its dark secrets waiting to be uncovered. The explorers had come this far, but they had no idea just how far they would have to go, or what they would face, before they could understand the true nature of the emerged empire. The first steps into the warship's depths felt like a descent into the unknown. And with every moment, the mystery deepened. What had they awakened? The warship emerges. The silence inside the emerged empire was deafening, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's ancient machinery. The explorers continued down the long corridor, their hearts pounding in their chests. Every step they took seemed to echo louder in the vastness of the warship, amplifying their sense of isolation. They had entered a place where time had stood still for centuries, and yet it felt like the ship itself was alive, watching them, waiting for something. The corridor led them to a massive chamber, its size unimaginable. The room stretched far beyond the limits of their vision, its walls adorned with intricate, glowing patterns that pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. The air was thick with the scent of ancient metal, and the temperature was colder than they expected, as though the ship had been dormant for eons. As they moved further into the room, their eyes were drawn to the center. There, standing like a monument, was the control center of the warship. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The controls were a strange mix of organic and technological, seemingly grown rather than built. The console was covered in a smooth reflective surface, pulsating with faint light. It looked almost like a living organism, alive with energy but dormant, waiting for something to activate it. "Is this the heart of the ship?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with awe. Commander Jarek nodded. "It seems to be. But it's not like anything we've encountered. This ship, it's ancient, but its technology is so far beyond our own." The team spread out cautiously, scanning the area. The deeper they went, the more they could feel the presence of the ship. It was as though it was responding to their presence, as if it recognized them, acknowledging their intrusion. The crew's unease grew with every passing moment, but they knew they had come too far to turn back. Then suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a low, grinding noise that came from deep within the ship's structure. The control center's panels flickered to life, the pulsating lights shifting in rhythm. The air crackled with energy, and the floor beneath their feet trembled. "What's happening?" Lyra asked, her voice rising in panic. The walls of the room seemed to open, revealing a vast central chamber. In the center of the chamber, hovering above the ground, was a massive floating object. It was shaped like a control pod, but it was unlike anything the explorers had ever seen. The pod was surrounded by a network of glowing tendrils, each connected to the warship's systems. The entire structure seemed alive, breathing, as though the warship itself had a mind of its own. "This is it," Commander Jarek said, his voice a mixture of awe and fear. "This is the heart of the warship. We found it." The glowing tendrils extended, wrapping around the control pod, and the pod began to descend toward them. The explorers stepped back, unsure of what to do. The pod hovered just inches above the floor, and then, with a sudden jolt, a voice echoed throughout the chamber. It was deep, resonating with power, but it was not a voice they could understand. It was alien, no language they recognized. Lyra, her eyes wide with shock, turned to Jarek. "What is that? What's happening?" Commander Jarek's face was grim. "I don't know, but whatever it is, we're not alone here." The voice continued to speak, its tone growing louder and more intense, until the entire chamber seemed to shake. The walls flashed with light, and the floor trembled beneath their feet. The explorers were on the edge of panic, unsure whether to stay or flee, but they couldn't tear their eyes away from the spectacle unfolding before them. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the voice ceased. The pod floated silently in the air, and the glowing tendrils retracted, disappearing back into the walls. The chamber fell silent once again, but the tension in the air was palpable. It was as though something had changed, something had been awakened within the ship. Lyra took a hesitant step forward, reaching out to touch the control pod. The surface was warm to the touch, and as her fingers made contact, the ship seemed to react. The lights in the room flickered once again, and a new signal appeared on the ship's control panels, an ancient map showing the new location. This wasn't here before," Lyra whispered, looking at the map in disbelief. "It's pointing to a new place. It's not just the warship. It's leading us somewhere else." Commander Jarek frowned, his expression deep in thought. "But why? What's there? What's waiting for us?" Before anyone could answer, a sudden tremor shook the entire warship. The ship's systems came alive, and the explorers heard a loud whirring noise from somewhere deep within the ship's core. It was as if the warship had just come to life, readying itself for something. "We need to get out of here," Jarek ordered. "Now." But it was too late. The warship had stirred, and now it was awake. Whatever secrets it held were about to be revealed, and the explorers were caught in its grip, unable to escape. The emerged empire had risen from the shadows of history, and now the true purpose of the legendary warship was about to unfold. Battle awaits. The crew had no time to process what was happening. The tremors beneath their feet intensified, and the entire warship seemed to vibrate as if it were coming alive, shaking off centuries of dormancy. The glowing symbols on the walls flickered with increasing intensity, and the air crackled with energy. The warship's internal systems were powering up, and a deep mechanical hum filled the chamber, growing louder by the second. The explorers exchanged nervous glances, but no one spoke. The silence between them was suffocating, filled with a shared sense of dread. "We need to move now." Commander Jarek's voice cut through the tension, sharp and commanding. "This isn't good. We don't know what's activating, but it's not just the lights. The ship is preparing for something." The crew scrambled to make their way back toward the docking bay, but as they did, the walls of the warship seemed to close in on them. The corridors shifted, the architecture responding to the activation of the warship's systems. The explorers found themselves in a maze of twisting passages, with the warship's complex design seeming to shift with every turn. It was as though the ship was alive, and it was trying to keep them contained. Lyra, who had been tracking the map from earlier, glanced back at the others. "The map. Look." She pointed to a screen on her tablet, where the location marked by the warship's system had changed. A new signal blinked, one far more urgent and ominous than before. "There's a fleet out there," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "The ship is preparing for a battle." Commander Jarek's eyes narrowed. "A fleet? Here? But who would have known we were here?" The answer came in the form of a massive burst of light from outside the warship. The explorers rushed to a viewport just in time to see a fleet of enormous ships materialize from the darkness of space. The ships were advanced, sleek and deadly in appearance, their weapons already charging. They were here for the emerged empire. And they weren't alone. The ships were joined by a massive, mysterious force, something far more terrifying than any ship. It was clear now. The warship was no longer a relic of the past. It was a beacon for an incoming storm. The fleet had detected its reactivation, and they had come to claim it. "We need to get to the command center, now," Jarek barked. "The ship's systems are preparing for battle, and we have to figure out how to defend ourselves." The crew rushed toward the heart of the warship, where the control center lay, hoping to find answers. But as they ran, the warship's systems continued to hum louder, as if acknowledging the incoming threat. In the distance, they could hear the sound of weapons charging, the ships preparing to strike. The explorers had no idea who the enemy was or what they wanted with the warship, but one thing was certain: the emerged empire was a prize worth fighting for. When they reached the control center, they found the walls of the chamber glowing brightly, and the ancient living technology was now active, responding to the external threat. A large holographic map appeared in the center of the room, displaying the incoming fleet's coordinates. The warship was preparing itself for battle, and the explorers realized that they had just become part of the war. "We don't have time to understand everything," Lyra said, her eyes scanning the holographic map. "But the warship is getting ready to fight. If we don't help it, we'll be wiped out in minutes." Commander Jarek looked around at his crew, and then his gaze fell on the strange alien technology surrounding them. The warship's systems were not entirely unfamiliar, but they were far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. "We'll have to trust the ship," he said grimly. "We need to find a way to interface with it. Let's get to the central console." The crew worked quickly, with Lyra leading the charge. Her hands flew over the controls, trying to make sense of the warship's language. She could feel the power of the ship, the ancient energy coursing through its systems, but it wasn't responding the way they had hoped. Then, just as they were about to give up, the central console flickered and came to life. A deep, resonating voice echoed throughout the control room, and the entire ship seemed to respond. "You have awakened the emerged empire. Battle is inevitable." The words sent a shiver down their spines. The warship, it seemed, was not merely an ancient relic. It was a weapon of unimaginable power, and it was ready to fight. The holographic map shifted, and the targeting systems of the warship locked onto the incoming fleet. The ship's weapons, ancient but incredibly advanced, powered up, glowing with an eerie light. Massive cannons appeared from hidden bays, and defensive shields activated with a thunderous roar. "We've activated the warship's combat systems," Lyra said, her voice a mix of awe and fear. "It's preparing to engage." Commander Jarek nodded, his face set in determination. "We have no choice now. We're in this battle, whether we're ready or not. Let's make sure we survive this." The warship's massive guns began to charge, and the first shots were fired into the dark void of space. The incoming fleet responded immediately, unleashing a volley of laser blasts. But the emerged empire was not an easy target. The ancient warship unleashed its fury, firing devastating pulses of energy that tore through the enemy ships with precision and power that no one could have predicted. As the battle unfolded, the crew realized they were witnessing history. A war that had been dormant for centuries was now raging again. The emerged empire was no myth. It was real, and it was a force to be reckoned with. But as the battle raged on, one question remained: why had the emerged empire been hidden away for so long? And what was the true purpose of its reawakening? The answers, however, were still beyond their reach. All they knew was that the battle had only just begun. The final stand. The battle in space had become a furious storm of energy, flashes of light, and deafening explosions. The emerged empire stood tall in the face of overwhelming odds, its weapons firing relentlessly into the oncoming fleet. But for every enemy ship destroyed, two more appeared, closing in. The warship's ancient systems, though powerful, were showing signs of strain. It was clear they could not hold out forever. Commander Jarek paced the control room, his mind racing. The warship is holding its own. But there's too much firepower coming at us, he said, his voice filled with urgency. We need to find a way to disable the enemy fleet, or this battle will end with our destruction. Lyra's eyes were glued to the holographic map, tracking the movements of the enemy ships. We can't keep fighting like this, she said, her fingers flying over the console. The warship's systems are recharging too slowly. We need to use something. A weapon or technology we haven't unlocked yet. The lights flickered as the warship's systems strained to keep up with the barrage of enemy fire. The crew's hearts raced, but they couldn't give up. Not now. They had come too far to lose everything. Suddenly, the control room door opened with a low hiss. A new figure stepped in. An alien being, unlike any of the crew had ever seen. It was tall, humanoid, and its skin glowed with an ethereal blue light. The crew froze, weapons instinctively raised. The being raised a hand in peace, and to their surprise, a voice boomed through their minds. I am Kylith, the voice echoed, the last of the architects of the emerged empire. The crew recoiled in shock. They were not alone. You have awakened the ship, and now it chooses you to lead. Jarek stepped forward cautiously. What do you mean, lead? The ship was meant to be a weapon, wasn't it? Kylith's glowing eyes seemed to flicker as if contemplating. The emerged empire was designed not only to destroy but to preserve balance. Its power was never meant to be unleashed upon those who were unworthy. But now, the balance is broken and the time has come to choose. You have awakened it, and it will follow your command, if you are strong enough to lead. The room fell silent. The crew had been fighting for their lives, but they had never expected this, to be faced with a choice that could alter the fate of the entire galaxy. Could they truly command such power? Kylith extended a hand toward the holographic map. I will teach you the path, but only if you agree to the price. The emerged empire will destroy the enemy fleet, but its power will cost you. One must lead it to its final destination and return it to the void. The warship cannot remain in this galaxy without consequence. Lyra stepped forward, her mind racing. And if we refuse, if we leave now, the warship will cease to fight. It will return to its slumber, and the galaxy will fall into chaos. Kylith warned, his voice somber. There are others who seek the emerged empire for more than conquest. If it is not stopped now, nothing will remain. Jarek looked at his crew. They had come this far, and now the weight of their decision was more immense than anything they had faced before. The battle raged outside, the enemy closing in. The emerged empire could still win the fight, but the cost of its power was steep. We don't have time to debate, Jarek said, his voice firm. We have a choice to make, and we make it now. Lyra nodded in agreement. We awaken the warship and lead it to its final destination. The galaxy can't afford to let it fall into the wrong hands. With that, the crew joined forces with Kylith, taking their positions at the warship's core. The power of the emerged empire surged through the control systems, and the ship seemed to respond to their resolve. Energy crackled, and the warship's weapons powered up once more, stronger than before. The holographic map shifted once again, displaying the enemy fleet's exact location. With a deep breath, Commander Jarek issued the order. Prepare for final combat. All systems to full power. The warship unleashed a devastating barrage of energy, ripping through the enemy ships with pinpoint accuracy. The vast fleet that had threatened to overwhelm them was now crumbling under the might of the emerged empire's advanced weapons. But as the battle raged on, a deep rumble filled the warship, and the ground shook beneath their feet. This is it, Lyra said, her voice filled with realization. We're leading the warship to its final resting place. Kylith's voice filled the control room once again. The ship will lead you to the void. You must ensure it reaches its destination, or all that remains will be consumed. The warship's course shifted. The enemy fleet had been defeated, but the true test was yet to come. The emerged empire moved slowly toward the farthest edge of the galaxy, toward the dark abyss where it could never threaten the universe again. As the warship drew closer to the edge, the crew felt the weight of their decision. The cost of their victory was clear. The warship's systems began to hum with an unnatural intensity, and the void stretched out before them. The emerged empire would disappear into the abyss, never to return. It had been a tool of destruction and preservation, but now it was time for it to rest, far from those who might misuse its power. With a final, resonating pulse, the warship surged forward into the dark void, disappearing from sight. The galaxy was saved, but the cost was steep. The explorers had witnessed the rise of a legend, and now they would live with the knowledge that they had chosen to put an end to it. The myth had been true, but the journey was over. The emerged empire was no more, and the galaxy, for now, was safe.